Yeah, so Ian and I decided that we were going to do drawings of each other. So I did a drawing of Ian, and I did it with a time lapse, and then of course I got done. I was like working on the time lapse. I'm like, oh, this is going to come out so great, and the picture was looking good, and I was like, oh, perfect. And then I got done, and I look up, and my video has disappeared. Like it stopped, and I didn't get any of it. So anyway, so I'm gonna do another one for next week. But Ian did a time lapse, and I don't know, Ian, what were you saying about your time lapse? I mean, it was kind of a weird experience. Why was that?
Yeah, so whenever I was recording my time lapse of you for the portrait, my gooseneck tripod it's really shaky. That's the first part.
Yeah.
So for regular video, it's not too good. But since it was a time lapse, it turned out okay. The shakiness wasn't too much of an issue. But I did have my phone like directly over the page, like right here, and I usually lean over my drawings so I can kind of get a straight on view of what I'm drawing, and there's no distortion. But because my phone is usually where my face would be, I kind of had to like lean to the side and look from a more upright position compared to over the page. Mm-hmm. And I know that can lead to some distortion, so I was a little worried because of that. And
I kind of always think about that when I'm doing my pictures too, because you are kind of at a weird angle instead of it being up. Because personally, like when I'm drawing, I like to have it kind of upright like this, where I can see everything in perspective the whole time I'm working on it. But
I wasn't allowed to be in my super bad posture, hunched over my work. So, like I said, I was leaned back, and I guess maybe not everyone is familiar with the distortion that happens when you're drawing from a weird angle. So if you're kind of sitting up and your paper's flat on the table, you're drawing what looks proper to you. Yeah. So you're kind of stretching it out on the table so it can look normal to you sitting upright. But when you pick the paper upright, because you were kind of adjusting it to your angle, it can actually be stretching it out when you kind of change that angle a little bit.
Yeah, it's like those chalk drawings you see on sidewalks that people will do, and they look like they're like three-dimensional, and then you look at it from the side and they're stretched out long across the sidewalk. Yeah, so you get that kind of distortion, like not that big of a distortion.
Yeah, I mean,
you get it.
Like in chalk art, a lot of the times it's intentional because it's all about optical illusions. But when you're doing a regular drawing, that you typically want to avoid that. So I kept picking up the paper and making sure I wasn't getting any of that distortion. Mm-hmm. Which in the end I didn't, which is really good. And
okay, so let me ask you a question. So when you're doing a portrait of somebody else, do you feel like kind of self-conscious about whether it looks like the person or
sometimes
how it's coming out?
I mean, I definitely care because that's the main objective. Mm-hmm. You want the portrait to look like who the portrait is of. So I mean, I don't usually stress about it, but I care.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not super anxious about it, but
yeah. And I think a lot of times it's funny, like I don't care so much if I'm not getting paid for something, if I'm just doing it on my own and I'm drawing somebody because I want to. Mm-hmm. When I get paid for it, then I start to like going, okay, I really have to get it good, you know? Yeah. So I think I'm probably not alone in that. I think a lot of people kind of worry about those sort of things, but that worry can also kind of like ruin the picture for me, you know, sometimes if I feel like, I'm thinking so much about that I can't concentrate or think about what I'm working on with my picture.
Yeah. I mean, to me, reactions are also a really important part of it. So you haven't seen the finished product yet, so I haven't seen your reaction.
Yeah.
But I think that's normal. Especially.
I don't know, like given his work, it could be, you know, like big head. I've got my brain sticking outside of my head. I don't think that's it.
I went with, obviously you saw I did your portrait with pencil, using mechanical pencil. Which I've been doing mostly just pen work for like the past 2 years. So this felt a little unusual.
Yeah.
The only time I use pencil nowadays usually is for just writing, just schoolwork and stuff like that. So I was kind of just taking a few steps back, and I mean, everyone started out drawing with pencil, or maybe crayon, maybe chalk, but everyone's familiar with pencil and everyone has drawn with pencil. But it was interesting because I didn't really know which techniques to fall back onto. I tried hatching, obviously, and I did that for some of the portrait, but then I also tried doing very small gentle circles for shading to get it really smooth, and then I also used my finger to smudge some of the graphite to also provide some different types
Value.
of shading and value. And I was switching things up a lot because I think I was kind of also relearning.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you Ian's time lapse of his video, so you can get a look at it. And then next week you'll get a chance to see a time lapse of my video. Cool. Years ago, when I first started teaching middle school, I wanted to do portraits with my classes. And one of the things that I realized was that if kids drew themselves or they tried drawing their friends, they were always really self-conscious and they didn't want to show their pictures after they were done, or they wouldn't even attempt them. So my response to that is that I started posing for the classes, and I would sit up and let them draw me, and it was kind of their chance to take a jab at the teacher if they wanted to. You know, they could make me look goofy. Sometimes I even, would pose in a way that I was goofy to begin with. Like I'd have my finger up my nose, or I would just kind of make funny faces or do things to make them laugh, and it would loosen them up. So over time, I started doing this as an assignment for all my different classes and for students that I was teaching that were developing portfolios. And it resulted in there being a lot of pictures of me, which I started to collect from students that were willing to sell me their pictures. So this picture that Ian's working on, I think he's done a great job. He's using lots of different techniques, from cross-hatching to he's constantly overlaying line upon line, and it creates value, which is kind of the light and dark in a picture. He also uses an eraser to go back and create highlights, and the result is that you end up with a picture that has a lot of depth. There's a lot to it, not just kind of an outline or a surface picture. With Ian, I think he did a great job. I'm really happy with the results.